Welcome to the Deep Six podcast, where we make a generational impact on you and yours. What we do here is explore a 6-point model into your health, your life, and your journey while you're here. So let's dive deep and help you thrive, not just survive. Hello again. Hello. Welcome to the Deep Six podcast. I have another wonderful guest with us that I gave her some time out of the practice. Aren't I nice?
So nice.
Yeah. And Alex Bailey here, our nurse practitioner that's been working for us for
5 years.
5 years.
Almost 6.
Saving lives, curing people, making them thrive, making them happy and healthy. And so thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And you know what we do here always at the Deep Six is kind of educate you, if you will, on the journey of health and life and our 6-point model. That's the foundation of good living and healthy living. And I often like to think fun living too.
Yeah.
So that if we're here, we might as well have fun, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Alex, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I will make your introduction a little more formal so that people know who you are. But obviously you work with us at Longevity Health Institute in Southeastern Michigan. And you are a board certified nurse practitioner. And you went to Oakland University.
Yes.
Correct. I love Oakland University, by the way. Go Grizzlies. Go Grizzlies. One of my patients, by the way, just got me on their, he kind of got me in the back door on the
golfing?
The golf,
Ooh,
the club.
Yeah.
There's I was like,
you can't get into that.
You can't.
You can't.
I called up there 3 years ago and I'm like, they put me on a list. Yeah, well, you're 180
yeah,
on the
it's
list.
a huge wait list.
And
Huge.
And so very grateful to him. He got me in, and it's a beautiful golf course, and it's really close to my house. So, but yeah, and the Grizzlies, it's a great campus. My daughter goes there, and my son Noah right now is doing a lot of stuff at Oakland U. Like their summer, school stuff.
Yeah, he's doing a computer programming, right, or coding. He was doing a coding camp.
Yep,
so
exactly.
cool. Yeah,
great
I didn't know
stuff
they
for
had
kids
that.
in the summer there.
Yeah,
great. So a great university. But anyway, and then you trained in critical care.
Yes.
At DMC.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. And tell us about that. Tell us about your experience there at DMC.
Yeah, so it was really invaluable. I can't imagine getting a better hands-on thrown to the wolves education.
Oh,
really?
They did that to you?
Because, well, it's, you don't have a lot of resources. It's great working there as a new registered nurse because you have to do all of your own procedures, like your ART sticks, your blood draws, your IVs, your lines, your vent care, your wound care. You do really everything, and you get to learn how to do everything, which is amazing. And you get to take care of a pretty sick patient population. So you really learn a lot. And I love the patients that I worked with, and I really loved the coworkers that I had and the doctors that I worked with. I worked in surgical ICU, so I got a little bit of a little bit of experience in surgical, but we worked throughout the tower, so medical, neuro, cardiovascular. So I learned so much. It was a great experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's what's so impressive about that is that that's hard work.
Yeah.
And kind of not a lot of appreciation in the moment. I'm not,
No,
right.
definitely not.
Yeah, I'm trying to reflect back on when I was an ER doc and worked at Henry Ford and stuff. So yeah, you feel a little beat up, and
you get very beat up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the term, which is, it's very accurate, is critical care. I mean, there's a lot of critical stuff going on, and so thank you. I'll say thank you for that, because it lays a foundation for your education and your brain.
Absolutely.
And even where you're at now, And I said this in another podcast to one of our other practitioners, is that I have the utmost respect for nurse practitioners, nurses too, by the way, but just because your journey and what you've done and, in there too. It's not just
hands-on patient care.
And critical stuff and then in a city. I mean, in a city, there's a big difference in a suburb hospital and a city hospital.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And not that the subs don't see anything real. They do, believe me. But it's I mean, when I was at Henry Ford downtown, it was like, oh my gosh.
Yes. Same neighborhood.
Yeah. If you're not, getting a few gunshots and stab wounds at night in the ER, it was like, it was like you thought something was off.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know. So, but share with us that's where you came from, but share with us like how you got to Longevity Health Institute, but also like that transition, because that's a big transition.
Yeah. So as you know, when you're working in traditional medicine, especially working in critical care, you're really at the end line of the disease trajectory. And after working there, 3, 4, 5 years, the adrenaline wears off a little bit and you start to think about, okay, what am I doing? What do I want to do with my life? And ultimately I decided I wanted to be at the beginning of the disease trajectory instead of at the end where, you're really putting Band-Aids on things like 30 years of hypertension, coronary artery disease, fatty liver, type 2 diabetes. You're not really helping the problem, and you just see a lot of death, and it's sad, and it's necessary care, but I knew I wanted to be into something a little bit more preventative. So then I decided, to go back to school, become a nurse practitioner, and my focus was primary care. I just wanted to be out of the hospital, to be really at the beginning of the disease process. But then even in school, when I was doing primary care, I was like, this isn't even the beginning of the disease process, because, and you're still at a place where you're trying to put Band-Aids, pharmaceuticals, things on these people's symptoms,
Yeah.
And I didn't really even realize functional medicine existed at the time. I didn't know much about it. I always was more interested in a holistic approach. At the time I was already a certified yoga instructor, which plays into it a little bit. So I had a lot of interest. And then, I got lucky really. So I sent out like 100 emails to different people in order to get a preceptor in a primary care office. And Lauren Ross responded.
I think I know who that is.
Yes, you know who that is. So Lewerenz.
So you owe Lauren a lot.
I owe Lauren a lot.
Yeah.
I do. No, I do. I tell her this. Lauren, and of course you for ultimately hiring me, but essentially she agreed to take me on as a student, and I worked with her for 3 months. She was a wonderful mentor and kind of my first education in functional medicine before, of course, you hired me and I did my fellowship with you. So I got lucky, but I felt like it was meant to be kind of because I really enjoy it and I was really interested in it off the get-go. I just didn't know how to get there.
Yeah, and I actually remember in our old office, another location, Madison Heights, where I met you.
Yes.
In day one.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to you, which is so funny because it's so far from where you're at now, but that little fear, that little like, oh, this is new and what's happening. And, you're smart as hell, a lot of experience, et cetera. But I knew it was different, because that's, I was there.
Yeah.
You just do traditional ER medicine, family practice medicine, whatever. And this is a whole different kind of field.
Very different.
And you were like eager and you were like excited.
Yeah, very excited.
But I was like, don't worry, it's all good. You're going to pick up a lot. You'll be like a sponge and and so I remember that day in the back area where we used to work at Madison Heights. It's so funny, but it's fun to reminisce about that because we and you have come a long way.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Do you remember me trying to ask you about rock climbing because you put it on your profile and I was a big rock climber at the time and I was like, I have to get in good with this guy so he hires me.
I don't. I have rock climbed.
Yeah.
Actually, at many places, indoor and outdoor. But that must have been, on my website or something?
It was on your website because, of course, I stalked the website. Because
I was probably into it at the time.
Yes.
Because I've gotten into a lot of different outdoor things at times.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that's fun. Slightly scary if you're doing it outside.
Yeah.
And I was in Texas doing that before, and pretty,
nice.
Pretty. It was fun. A lot of fun. Very hard. People don't appreciate the difficulty of something like that.
Yeah.
Very difficult. I never felt my forearms be so, and then realize like you're holding on by your fingertips.
It's a weird type of strength.
Yeah.
It is forearm strength. That's for sure.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And I won't get into this, but I've indoor climbed with my wife that know very well, and out in Las Vegas at these indoor climbing things. And that was a one and done because she got a little mad at me because I was trying to coach her up the wall,
Oh yeah, there's none of that.
Yeah, and she was just like, "Shut your mouth! I'm gonna do this." And
so there's a rule: romantic partners cannot be climbing partners.
Yeah, I see this. I did not read that part of the manual.
Yes.
Yeah, I missed that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But Well, super. So tell me this. Tell me, obviously you've grown with us. You came in, did a fellowship, did training with us. You were under Lauren Ross, and myself, and kind of like, what's that journey? What's that experience been? I mean, functional medicine, if you will, a little bit holistic, integrative medicine. It's very different than the hospital. And
Very different.
Very different experience. And, tell me the good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm just grateful to be in a place where I can practice functional medicine, right? Because it's not all that common, but I feel like it's getting more common. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm in the world now. I hear about it all the time, every time, but I was getting my hair cut last night, and my stylist was like, "Oh, I love functional medicine." And I was like, "Oh, who do you listen to?" And she told me like all about it and stuff. But essentially, it's just really nice to be in a place where we have all of this testing at our fingertips. We have so many resources. I had a patient that I saw today for their second follow-up, and we are trying to deep dive, as the podcast, into why they were having all of this debilitating chronic fatigue, right? So we did all of our testing, met back for the second appointment, and we identified some adrenal dysfunction with saliva testing. We identified some omega-3 deficiencies with our omega index. Ultimately, I believe secondary to chronic viral infections like Epstein-Barr, HSV. And we put together a little bit of a plan. I can go into that if you want to hear about that. But essentially, as he was walking out, he said, "Wow, it's just really great to go somewhere and be told that not everything is normal." Because he had been told repeatedly, "Oh, your testing looks great. You look normal." This is somebody, not a very old gentleman, that would get in a car for an hour and then would be out for 4 days.
Wow.
So horrible, you know, and we put together a plan for him, and it gave him hope. And you asked me what it's like to work at the office, to work in functional medicine. I never have to tell a patient that's suffering, "Oh, your labs look great, everything's normal." I never have to say that, and I'm just grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny because sometimes it's simple.
Yes.
It's just looking.
It's just
because
looking.
the deep dive. I mean,
Right.
when our 6-point model, and you hear me, and the audience hears me talk about this a lot, and we don't get too into it in each segment that we do here, but like even just down to genetics, genomics, things like this, like you can get a lot of nitty-gritty answers on people if you just look.
Right.
I mean, if you don't look and you're just looking, you got 5 to 7 minutes in the room with a patient because you're just looking at your schedule and you got 40 people to see,
Right.
which is not us, by the way.
Right.
And so, and you're like, okay, yeah, you look normal. You're fine. In fact, somebody today, new patient, just like you're bringing up, brought in their labs. This gentleman has chronic kidney disease. He's developed autoimmune stuff now. His wife brought him in because she had seen us in the practice before. She had rheumatoid. Long story short is, he's like, "Oh, I just had labs done for my doctor." And he said, see the nephrologist soon. And he hands over his labs, and it's literally like a CBC, cholesterol, and like a chem panel. I'm like, I mean, I didn't want to bother him and insult him and all like that, but I was like,
Right.
it's like such scratching the surface. It's like, of course you're normal. And he's so far from normal. I mean, he got zero guidance on what to do. Even the nephrologist, the guy's doing, I guess, his job because he's medically managing him with the meds. But he's just tweaking his meds. He's just up and down in his blood pressure meds, and, kind of nothing about diet, nothing about anything else.
Right.
And just like, I'll see you in 6 months, So you just got to look, know your numbers, deep dive, look into some foundational things that are really key. And it's so profound, and
Absolutely.
and exactly like and then that gives you stuff to work with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And often, more than not,
Yeah.
people feel better. Voila.
Yeah. People do. They feel better. That's the other aspect.
Yeah. Imagine
right?
that.
Like
Imagine that.
You have the hope of feeling better, and then there comes you feel better.
Yeah.
So
I said to someone the other day, and because you know me, I get a little excited.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. And but just to motivate, I mean, because I'm excited for them, because I mean, if I see a bad result, a bad lab, or if I see a bad live blood or if I see something, I know we can make a difference.
Right.
So I go, oh, this is good.
Yes.
It's not good. You have a really big issue here, but I know we can change that.
Exactly.
And this is going to improve you dramatically. But what I said to him though is, I said, if you ever go to a doctor or a practitioner, out there and they are not giving you an answer or they're not giving you a plan, some kind of plan of attack, and they're just saying, like you said, like everything looks good and normal.
Yeah.
You need to move on. Because one, they're not listening, or two, they're not looking deep enough.
Yeah.
And you're not.
Or they don't know, which is fine, and then you move on.
And that's okay to say too.
Yeah.
Because we don't know everything.
Right.
Like when we go see a patient, and sometimes there's difficult, rare autoimmune cases and that, and we get them on the right path, but this is tough. This is a unique case,
Yeah.
And that's okay to say, like, I don't know, but we're going to start here.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to get you to this practitioner or this person or whatever, So anyway, let's start with, I always do this. I love starting the podcast with a quote. And I love this one from Arthur Schopenhauer because it says so much. And I see this, and I have to explain this to patients a lot when I'm not visit 1 or 2. It's usually like visit 4 or 5 about thinking about the long game of life and prevention. But this is the quote. Just remember, once you're over the hill, you begin to pick up speed. It sounds dark, but tell me what it means.
I took a positive
good
view on it, which I don't think that's what it's supposed to mean, but I was trying to think of something positive about it. And essentially, I took it as with every decade of life, you gain things, right? You gain knowledge, experience, things you can pass on to future generations. It might not be what it actually means, but that's what I was trying to take out of it.
Always,
it's a context, but so I feel like our society can be really ageist. So I wanted to take a little bit more of a positive approach.
Yeah.
But what do you
well,
feel
that is,
like
but
it
that
means?
is true. But no, that's a good point. It's a very good point that because you get wisdom, you get experience, you get knowledge of things,
and that's a snowball effect too.
For sure.
Yeah.
In a lot of good ways. And you get scars. I always say, follow the people that have scars. That's why I tell my wife, don't worry, I'm never going to touch any of these things in my face. Because I have plenty of scars. It means I've had a lot of life.
Yes. Of course.
But in reality though is because, it's like there's a lot of experience there. So I do like where you're coming from there. But this is where I took it.
Oh, yes.
And where, not so much a negative, but where I explain to patients, people think aging is linear. So they think that like, when you're 20, you'll feel that way at 30. And at 30, well, I should feel that way at 40. And if it's a little bit worse, like things get a little bit worse, it's only going to be a little bit worse. Well, studies show this. And it's a very interesting report, studied that the populace over age of 55 reports that a lot of their symptoms progress fast, like whatever it is, their complaints. Yes. And it's all a subjective study, but it's after 55. So after about 55, you start to, really compound your complaints and compound your, disease or your chronic conditions or your, comorbidities and stuff.
Yeah.
And
it's getting dark.
Yeah. But this quote, right? I am making it dark. I know, but I use this as powerful to people because people will go, no, I'm doing pretty good. And I'm like that. And again, remember I said, I don't get into these kind of talks, visit 1 or 2.
Right.
Because my goal is to make them feel better. Use the 6-point model, solve some of their issues and goals. But then I kind of go, we got to think of the long game with you. And just because you're good at 50 or 55 and things feel pretty good, doesn't mean you're going to be there at 60 or 65. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing. It's like that curve of like a hockey stick, where it's like all of a sudden we're not just slowly aging. It seems like we're fast aging. Now, that being said, okay, I will say, and I'm going to use my own mother, which, I talk about her a lot.
I love your mom.
Both my moms, but mom and stepmom, because they were very youthful, and both of them have done some reversing things. Yeah. So one's 82, and I'm going to have her on here once. I'm going to make her, but I have to like, bait switch her kind of thing. Tell her I'm taking her to dinner.
Yes.
But she's 82. Even her genomic testing, her biologic age, has her at 73.
She looks great.
Yeah. So her DNA tests I've done came back at 73. So,
Yeah.
but she has improved her last 10, 15 years. She'll tell you. She's lost weight. She got off oxygen. She's working out. She's proud of all the activities she's doing. Granted, I've had her on hormones, 18, 20 years. But, and then my stepmother, Chris, she is 68. I had to think about it for a second. God, she looks 50. She is just as active,
Amazing.
energetic and all that. Wasn't like that in her 40s, 50s.
Oh, interesting.
She looked great, but she had some complaints and aches and pains and just things that were, where she's thriving now because of just, some things with hormones and gut and diet and all that.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be morbid.
No. Well, and I think what you're saying too is an important point to drive home from a prevention standpoint, especially for our male patients, because I think our female patients, they come in 40, 50, falling off the cliff of hormone loss of menopause, and they know it's happening. Whereas, I feel like with men, it's more of a slow, gradual decline in things like testosterone. So they might need the quote.
Yeah, I'll use that.
You'll use that.
I'll use that for sure. Yeah. Because you are right, though. But, we're buffoons. Women are in tune with their emotions and their physical, I believe, way more. Men, it takes like a board over the head to wake them up or something about how they feel. Most men, again, I'm being very generalized.
Right.
But they do. And it is a subtle, testosterone declines, 3 to 5% per year, in somebody's 40s and on. And obviously it's very different, but, it's not going to be, like you said, late perimenopause and menopause. It's going to be such a drastic, drop or stop of hormones. So, point well taken. And yes, we need a little, but we always do, right? Don't we? We need more coaxing, pushing.
Yeah. Although I shouldn't say that. It's a big generalization, right? Because I have great, very motivated male patients that are all up on everything. And then I have, female patients, not so much.
Yeah,
so,
we're being generalized.
Yes, we're
being generalized. But also men don't, I don't think, because it's talked about, right? Hormones are talked about. And if you say hormone, most lay people, most public population they think of women.
Right.
You say hormone, they think of sex hormones in women, right?
Right.
That's the way I think of it. You say, by the way, testosterone, you brought up testosterone. You say testosterone and everyone thinks men and sex.
Yeah, they only
or
do
muscle.
men, libido. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, so maybe share with us your experience with, testosterone.
Yeah.
And but in both sexes, but also, your experience stories and stuff. But because it's such a, a cliche, and it really shouldn't be.
No, it shouldn't be, but it's so funny to me. You're so right. I bring up testosterone because we test testosterone, total testosterone, free testosterone, and all of our female patients. We'll start with females first, and they'll be like, "I have testosterone. I'm a man." It's the response that I always get, and then of course it's always you associate it with libido, but it's so much more than that. And I have to tell my female patients that testosterone is your dominant hormone. It's even higher than your estradiol, even though it doesn't look that way in the lab because of, picograms per deciliter, nanograms per deciliter. It's actually a higher number. And it's your most predominant hormone, and it's so important for so many things. So I try to drive it home from the importance of bone health and bone building.
Amen.
Osteoblasts are bone building cells. You need it for your bone matrix. Of course, you need estrogen too, but it's very important for that, as well as your muscle mass, which also helps bone, which helps metabolism, which helps energy and drive, and then neurotransmitter production, right? Because it plays a big role in producing our dopamine, our serotonin, and honestly, that's probably the aspect of testosterone that I enjoy seeing a difference in the most is people's mood and personalities, because I think our hormones, you've said this, they play a big role in who we are and what our personality is. Like, I know I'm a high testosterone person. I like being outside. We're just talking about rock climbing. We're going to go backpacking,
Right.
It's part of my personality. And when you are a naturally higher testosterone person, male or female, and you lose it, you do not feel like yourself. And that's frequently what I hear, right? We have people come in and say, oh, I just don't feel like myself. And sometimes they can't even say why or elaborate on that. And I tell them, you don't need to. I mean, that's a good goal. We want you to help you make you feel more like yourself. And I've had so many instances where, we're replacing other hormones, getting things in balance, but especially because I do a lot of work with testosterone pellet insertions. I had someone that came in, they're a female, that their testosterone wasn't in balance. They were already on estradiol, progesterone. We gave them a testosterone pellet. She came back. I was like, hey, how did it go? I wrote a book. She's like, I wrote a book. I'm like, wow, that's the most amazing story that I've ever heard. Never gonna forget that one.
Put a pellet in, you wrote a book. It's like
exactly.
That's funny. That's cute.
So yeah, it's just so impactful when you get things in alignment.
Absolutely. I ask. I think I discussed this on another podcast, but I always ask every person, male or female, when I'm getting to know them. Especially if we get into like in the 6-point model, we start talking about hormones, and I think that's resonating with whatever their complaint is or whatever.
Yes.
Even if it's just prevention, because you brought up prevention, hormones are so key in bone health, osteoporosis, muscle mass, very key for aging, energy for, activity, just keep somebody off the couch, keep them moving.
Yeah.
You'll live longer and healthier. And then you mentioned mood, huge. But if they come in and they, are kind of, they got a complaint about whatever, and we're digging into their hormones, I always ask them, tell me about yourself. And I've already known them. They already, visit 2 or 3, and, whatever it is. And I'm like, no, but I mean, like, are you an athlete, or were you an athlete? Once an athlete, I always say always athlete. And what I mean by that is if you played high school sports, or you were super active, or you rock climbed, or you hiked or mountain biked, or you were competitive, in any way, men or women, likelihood you're going to have a more optimal, higher testosterone. You know what I mean? So it's going to mean a lot more to you when you lose it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that discussion, just listening, doesn't have to be a lab. It makes me decide if I should look at that and how much power and, value I should put into it, because it tells me about who they are.
Right.
And I think that's really key, because like you said, they don't know what's wrong.
No, they don't know what's wrong. Yeah. And you're so right. You can't always just look at the lab, because everybody's androgen receptors are so different.
Right.
So you got to take into account, and you taught me that trick, right? See if, what are they? Are they somebody that likes to read and, a little bit more sedentary? Is it somebody that's more active? And you always said, likelihood is they were a higher testosterone person to begin with, and they need that to feel more like themselves.
You have to fill those receptors.
Yeah.
And if those receptors aren't full, aren't really, you're going to be like, I'm okay.
Right.
But I'm not what I used to be. You know what I mean? And I think that's huge. By the way, you can be both. We're not trying to, pigeonhole or just label people by their hormones.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you could love reading, and you can love poetry, and you can love, meditation, and still love rock climbing and
of course
hockey or whatever, sports or whatever, So you can be both, but it gives us that feel of like knowing the person, like where they fit, right. Because if they weren't, I will find, and it's a generalization, but I look at the lab value, very personalized, but I also will find I'm not going to optimize somebody's testosterone too much if they weren't an athlete ever, if they weren't really, they weren't really that physical.
Yeah. Can make them feel weird.
It can. It can make them anxious.
Right.
You overshoot that receptor, and all of a sudden they get all the side effects and make them feel anxious.
Exactly.
You said something, and I said amen, because I said that because it's so undervalued. And I had somebody yesterday, new patient, 55, so fairly new menopause. And her biggest worry was her mom had horrible osteoporosis. Her life ended because of basically osteoporosis in her late 70s, otherwise very healthy. And so she's really nervous about it. And she got a bone density at about 55, 54 years old. And it was like showing, some osteopenia. And her doctor kind of scared her in a good way and just said, hey, you got to get ahead of this. We know your mom and all that.
Yeah.
But she was not offered or discussed anything about hormone replacement.
Yeah.
Which is the gatekeeper to the bone.
Right.
So, I mean, do you see that? Do you experience that?
I do.
When they come to us?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think it's a huge missed opportunity, right? You have people that come in that, like you said, have osteopenia, huge family history of osteoporosis, or they have osteoporosis, and they were never offered estrogen replacement, testosterone replacement, even though they're a candidate. I mean, not everybody's a candidate, but
Right.
they were a candidate, and I do feel like it's a missed opportunity for them, definitely, because if you wait too long, your receptors die and it's not as effective. But there's always hope. So I don't mean to be.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But she's going to be simple.
She's doing great. Yeah, 55.
Her name was Gail, and I said, Gail, you have nothing to worry about. First
Yeah.
of all, she was motivated. She's active. She's trying to eat right, kind of trying to clean up her diet and stuff. And she does Pilates a lot. And she's like, no, I'm motivated to build this bone because that was scary what I saw with my mom.
Yeah.
But I explained about how the hormone's the driver for the calcium in the bone and the channels in the bone and how they work. And I go, it's really not that complicated. We're just going to put that foundation in there. But I do want to say this because I think the listeners, there's this misinterpretation, I think, or understanding. You cannot flood your body with nutrients like vitamin D, calcium, vitamin K, even a little magnesium and stuff, and build bone. And I know that's a big statement.
Yeah.
But you need the hormone there.
Absolutely.
The hormone there is that gatekeeper, I say, because I get people come in and go, oh, well, I take like 800, 1,200 milligrams of calcium.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but they're not on hormones.
Right.
And there's literally some evidence and there's some studies that actually show that it calcifies arteries.
Absolutely.
You get atherosclerosis. And there's a study on women, non-hormone replacement outside of menopause doing that, and they worsen their vascular system.
Absolutely. And it's not going to be effective. Calcium's only effective up until the point that you correct a calcium deficiency.
Right.
It's not effective, as you're saying,
like just
to
flood
throw more and more and more, because more is not better.
Right, exactly.
That's
Of
definitely,
anything.
Of anything. More is not better than anything. I mean, you want and you don't want to take more than 550 milligrams of supplemental calcium, and your goal is 1,200 milligrams of dietary calcium in order to not be calcium deficient, so that your hormones work well for building your bone matrix, creating those osteoblasts, making those stronger, more loadable bones, right?
Right.
Normal bone density. So
Yeah. No, good point. And actually, I think this is a good time to bring this up because it's something that we just incorporated this year in the office. And this is more for somebody that's maybe elderly, and that is our Sonics plate.
Yeah.
So it's
cool.
it's a vibration plate. You guys can look those up. We use one called Sonics, and it's a medical grade one. So there's all this oscillation and vibrations, and you stand on it, and that movement and shaking essentially affects the trabecula of the bone and the matrix of the bone, and you build. And so somebody that might be older, that can't work out as hard, lift weights as much or whatever, they can get on that and do 10, 15 minutes, and it's like over an hour of exercise, weight-bearing exercise.
Yeah, so cool.
And you've been on it, right?
Yeah.
I have too, just to like see what this feels like.
Also, when I'm sitting at my desk and someone's on it, I can feel the vibration.
It's very strong. I'm going to say this. It is strong enough that in my office, right next to it. Oh, yeah, because
you're right next to the wall.
Yeah, the floor, and we're in a building, like a structure. It's not wood floor.
Yeah.
And you feel it buzzing and humming and kind of thing. But I think it's so cool because there's something out there. So of course, if you can put a weight vest on, or if you can go ruck, or you can lift weights or climb stairs or do squats or whatever, obviously that's easy. But somebody that might be a little bit older can get on that and are getting not just also the bone building and that kind of stimulus, but they're getting the lymphatic flow, the blood flow, which is what that plate is actually for. So I thought how appropriate to bring that up because again, it's you can reverse bone, you can build and reverse bone, but like you said, you got to get ahead of it, and you can't wait till you're 80.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to bring something up because it's something that's really, really scary. I think a bit in the sense of I see that comes across my visits and related to testosterone in men.
Okay.
I wonder if you've seen this. And I'll tell you a story that just recently, and it doesn't have to be this way. And it's where testosterone in men in therapy get a negative connotation. And that is that testosterone causes heart attacks, that testosterone causes blood clots, that testosterone therapy is bad for you, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You already said this, more isn't better.
Right.
So we're going to get into this, but tell me your experience with that in men, and where maybe outside they've come to us for help.
Yeah.
And there's been some, things didn't work for them, or they had some side effects or problems, or someone scared them, maybe rightfully so, and said, no, you got to get off that or whatever, because something happened this week with me and a patient that came to me. And what's crazy is it happens about every month. I get this across my, my visits or desk, but can you elaborate?
Yeah, well, I've definitely had the cases where I've had a male patient come in that were having their low testosterone treated outside of our office and getting huge injections, like one every 3 weeks, every month. And,
roller
coaster, that huge flood of hormone. You get a big aromatization to estradiol, which you definitely don't want. That's going to cause the belly weight, the man boobs, things like that. Can also cause, increase in blood pressure. It's not healthy to flood it all at that same time. And then you get the polycythemia, so the increased hemoglobin, and none of that is necessary when you do, or I shouldn't say it like that. None of that happens when you do it appropriately.
Right,
so people
exactly.
get rightfully afraid because they have negative side effects from testosterone when it's not dosed appropriately. I always encourage doing either testosterone pellet therapy, which is a slow subcutaneous release over 3 to 4 months, or we encourage, doing smaller doses every 4 days, or if they're really needle phobic, once a week, but definitely not a huge dose once a month, because then you get those negative side effects.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, exactly. You get into that. You want to keep them in that physiologic range, not super physiologic. Nothing happens good in super physiology. We're not Superman. But that's exactly what you explained there. Was exactly what I've seen. And one thing that happened this week, and it's happened before, and I'll reflect on this case actually. It was probably a year ago or so. A gentleman came to me, and he was on testosterone therapy through another clinic and another practitioner. And he was like, he knew all the benefits. He felt them. And he was documented many times to be low. So it wasn't like he had many doctors in the past that told him. And off the top of my head, he was probably 58, something like that, 57, 58. And he had a heart attack. So they were saying, get off your testosterone. Your testosterone caused it.
Oh, no.
And said like, well, but what about all this good? And it was because he was helping him lose weight, helping him get stronger, it's helping him mentally, etc. Well, the crazy part is this. It's exactly what you just said. So we went over his case, and I got his records and everything. So he had polycythemia. And for the audience, that is where your bone marrow will make extra hematocrit and make extra blood. So your blood gets thicker, essentially. And he also anecdotally had a little bit of, hypertension pre or post. I mean, I don't know if that had gotten worse or what have you. He was not I'll say lean man.
Okay.
He was, he could have been a little bit, in better shape, but he was dosing very high.
Yeah.
Once a week or more.
Yeah.
And he also, which we unraveled because I see this all the time, is he had undiagnosed and unreported or suspected sleep apnea.
Oh, yeah.
So obstructive sleep apnea will cause polycythemia with or without testosterone.
Right.
So he had
It's
this.
the real problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it was like a perfect storm.
Right.
But I also said, this is kind of obvious.
Yeah.
It wasn't your testosterone therapy in the sense of it was making you worse, and whoever dosed you and wasn't watching it and getting you dialed in right doesn't, okay. And because, off the top of my head, I really believe, I think he was getting literally 150, 200 milligrams a week. I mean, it was ridiculous. And anyway, long story short is he's big. So you think of like, yeah, and I ask, all you have to ask is, does your wife say you snore real bad?
Yeah, right.
It's really simple.
Right.
If you're wondering if you have sleep apnea out there,
yes,
it's really simple. Just ask your partner, well, do you snore real bad? And if they say yeah, or they don't sleep with you, you have a sleep divorce. You know what I mean?
They've already left the room.
They've already left the room, which could be many reasons. But it's likely you probably have some. You could be mild, which is probably not going to cause polycythemia, but it could be very severe.
Yeah.
So we found out in him, his was very severe. So here he's stressing his bone marrow. He's making all this extra, hematocrit and testosterone doing that too. And then of course, again, he wasn't the best shape and, what have you. So it is a perfect storm. Now, fortunately, he had a very small heart attack and all that. But believe it or not, we got all that corrected. We treated his apnea, made sure his blood looked all good, even checked him for genetics for related to cardiovascular risks, but got him back on testosterone therapy and he feels great and he's doing great. So it's just, you got to do it right.
Yeah.
You got to do it right, but you also have to look at the big picture. And I think it's really key when we see men that, they need more massaging in it. Like, you got to understand this,
Yes.
like what could happen. And that's why I don't play around with the dose. And here's some things.
Yeah. Very specific instruction.
Yeah.
This is what you're dosing.
But I mean, but we, on at least I know yourself too, because I know our cases, but there shouldn't be problems.
No, there's never problems. Yeah.
I mean, we don't see
people do really well.
Yeah, they do very well. No side effects if done right. No. If things get wacky, there's a reason.
Right.
Oh, I stopped it. Oh, I forgot my dosing. If things get wacky, it's usually on the patient. And so, good, coaching and monitoring is very key, but you just keep them in a physiologic range and you get all these benefits.
Absolutely.
And I can't really state that enough because it bothers me that sometimes someone then, because in their head, it's like, oh, I can never touch that.
Right.
And, by the way, anything too much or inappropriately could cause many side effects.
Right. Anything.
Anything.
Yeah.
So, just saying, oh, you can't do testosterone and give you a heart attack is ridiculous.
Well, and it's so sad because I think one of the most impactful things that I've seen for testosterone for men is it really helps with anxiety. Mm-hmm. And it just, that blew my mind and how often that happens. You get, a man that comes into the office, the testosterone levels are low, they're feeling very anxious, and you replace testosterone and they no longer struggle with anxiety, which is huge because anxiety is debilitating.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrible. It's it's not the worst thing for your quality, but it's one of the worst things for your quality of life.
It limits you so much. So all of a sudden it's like being in prison. It's like an anxiety prison of like...
Yeah, you're your own prison.
Right. Yeah. No, I've seen that myself many, many times. Yeah. And I think it's basically, the frontal lobe of the brain needs that, men especially need that for just confidence. So if you lack confidence, which you may have once had in decision-making or whatever, you overprocess and you're overprocessing. And of course, there's going to be just tons of anxiety.
Yeah.
No, I've seen that too. So what do you find that's the best... Well, and I'm being generalized, but way of, treating or people get the best result? I mean, do you tend to like and see better results with pellets or injections or gels or creams or, what do you tend to?
So it depends on the person, honestly. Like, I don't feel like I could pick one.
Yeah.
Generally, I would say I don't have a ton of men on transdermal absorption just because it's not the best. Not many men can absorb it very well and very consistently through their skin. Although I do have a handful of men that do really well with it. So, so it depends on the person. That's a really great option for somebody that's needle phobic, procedure phobic. And the opposite of that, I definitely do a lot of subcutaneous testosterone pellet replacement. So, we do an insertion every 3 to 4 months, giving 1,000 milligrams. It slowly absorbs. That's the most physiologic way to get testosterone because it's a slow release. But then there's, the few days of healing afterwards, and then you got to come back for your visit. So, sometimes people do prefer injections because it's not a procedure and they just heal better from that. And it just really, it's personalized, right?
Yeah.
It just depends on the person.
No, that's it. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
my experience, and the physiology is they're all safe if done right.
Right.
And you want to keep the most physiologic range.
Mm-hmm.
So, in doing that, I mean, these all could work.
Absolutely.
And if done right and if kept in the right range. I do find, though, like you said, I find that the transdermals, I think because of the concentration and the specific gravity of them, they don't necessarily absorb as well.
Right.
You will tend to get, in my experience and what I've seen, and you'll tend to get more conversion to dihydrotestosterone too, which in some ways can be good because it's much stronger. So there's a mood elevation with dihydrotestosterone. Right. I always find it interesting that in Australia, they use dihydrotestosterone.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And what I find is interesting about that is because, Aussies do always seem really happy, Yeah. but it's just, so, I've actually done this. It's kind of unique, but I've actually used a little, with their injection or their pellet, a little transdermal.
Oh, okay.
To give them dihydrotestosterone
Interesting.
more.
Yeah.
Now, that's the rare case. It's usually somebody that's got like mood issues and, all that, and just that little tweak.
That's really good to know.
But in the same breath, what does dihydrotestosterone do?
Yeah.
It's not great for our prostates as we get older.
No.
And it makes us all bald. Obviously, genetics make, people bald too, but it's so you might lose a little bit more hair. But that's the personalized tweaking of what you can do in the fine art of it, right?
Yeah, which is why, for women, I do not do very high doses at all for transdermal testosterone.
No.
We definitely jump to that testosterone pellet because if you get that conversion to dihydrotestosterone in women, that is not a happy camper.
No, it's weird.
We care about our hair.
Yeah, well,
and our skin.
Yeah, I find out you can lose a patient real fast. I learned this about 20 years ago. Okay. You can lose a patient real fast if you cause skin issues or acne.
Yes.
Or you cause them to lose their hair.
Right.
It's really interesting.
Shocking.
Yeah, shocking.
Shocking.
Wow, Doc, I feel great, but I went bald and I have a beard now. No. But no. I probably on one hand could count, regardless of age, how many women I have on transdermal testosterone because of I notice that they do get more. They lose hair. They start to lose a little bit of hair. No one wants that. You can't dose them as high enough. It doesn't absorb as well. Yeah. So we got to do either injections or pellets. There's troches too, which are this like lozenge, if you will. Yeah. I'm not a big fan because you got to dose those usually a few times a day.
Yeah, I've never used those.
Yeah.
In my patients.
They're kind of old school and they've kind of come into vogue now a bit.
Okay.
The thing is that they don't. The report is they don't taste the greatest. It's like a candy, and it's a troche you put it into your tongue, or your gum, and it dissolves over time. Yeah. But you got to dose it a couple times, 2-3 times a day.
Yeah.
And
the compliance for that might not be great.
Exactly. And so I don't find that. Now, before I go into our wonderful Black Book segment, I got to bring this up because I wanted to dig into this a little bit because it's so cool and unique that's out there. And I'm also seeing this now in a lot of social media and advertisements and that. And I just wanted to pick your brain about this a bit. But that is women and libido, or women and, public service announcement, pleasure, orgasm, things like this, because we do things with, we have many things that we do with men and women for sexual experience.
Absolutely.
But I just wondered what your experience is with that, because there's some new things that we do. And I've had some patients have profound, they're so happy with their results, but I just.
Yeah, you're talking about outside of testosterone replacement, I'm assuming, because we spent a lot of time talking about that. Vaginal DHEA, I find that I'm getting some good results with that, especially if you do 10 milligrams inserted vaginally, 2 to 3 times a week. Rub a little extra on your clitoris, for better sensation, so that can be beneficial. Anything that promotes nitric oxide, right? So NAD, if that's where you were going with this, NAD injections that can help, or Berkeley Life nitric oxide support supplement. That's just vasodilation. That's going to help sexual experience, definitely.
Excellent point.
Just like, man can take Viagra, women can take any sort of concentrated beet supplement like the Berkeley Life nitric oxide support. So that can be really beneficial.
I wasn't even thinking of that. And
What were you thinking?
No, I said I wasn't even thinking of that.
Yeah.
And you said that, and I have done that before, and it's so undervalued. Thank you, because you kind of just reminded me of this. I'll keep this in mind in the future, is because if you just, again, this is a sensitive topic, but it's very important in health and in life and in couples and that relationships. But sexual experience, and that is just like Viagra, that's a vasodilator, you know, that increases nitric oxide so men can get erections.
Yeah.
The clitoris is the same kind of mechanism. And so Berkeley Life, the supplement we use, which is a extract of beets, increases nitric oxide. And I have used that in women. I again, thank you, because I'm going to keep that in the forefront of my brain. But it has definitely helped before I've heard that, which is impressive, because all it is doing too is helping out their vasculature and their circulation, but where they'll report like, wow, like intercourse is way better.
Yeah. So I've used that. That helps. Definitely. Oxytocin.
I love that.
Hormone that we release with any sort of, sexual stimulation. So it can improve all of that in that area. But
I love oxytocin. When, and I don't use it too much, but when there's that person that says that, like, they're just not, it's not like what it used to be.
Yeah, they're not feeling it.
They're not, exactly.
Yeah, they're not feeling it.
I'm not feeling it, you know? And so it's very, I think, effective. You got to dose it right in that. But but I have a patient in Florida, I'm just thinking of right now, ironically, husband and wife are on the call, the Zoom, and we're talking, and he's in the background. I'm kind of talking to her about results and how things are going and going over Slav and all that. And he's in the background, and I won't say his last name, but his name's Gary. And Gary's like this. I'm not going to say his last name, but Gary's like this. Doc, I love you. Doc, I love you.
Yeah.
And and she's laughing. I know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
I know exactly what they're talking about. It's so funny. I'm like, so I see the oxytocin is working, right? Everybody's happy now, right?
Yeah.
And the beauty is there's immune benefits with oxytocin.
Right.
Huge immune benefits.
Well,
So,
and mood benefits, right?
Yeah.
Do you use it for depression? Because I've heard you can do that.
I have a bit.
Okay.
The problem is it's got such a short half-life.
Yeah.
So I have in somebody that's, refractory, and we got a lot of therapies going on. But I have, and they said it helps a bit, put it this way, it helps a bit enough to where, excuse me, where they will keep getting refills. They're not like, it's not perfect, but they do notice that. I actually use oxytocin too in cancer patients, and because of the immune benefits, there's a big stimulus of the of your T cells with oxytocin. So, anyway, we could digress into all that. Right. So, my Black Book segment.
Okay.
So, I'm going to hand my book, my memoir, over to you, and you just do whatever you want. You flip through this, you pick something random.
I was told I can have a minute.
Yeah, you can have a minute. You
to really find something good.
Yeah. Hit me with whatever you got. Tell me what it means to you. I'll tell you what I was thinking. By the way, sometimes that was written a year or so ago, so I'm like, what was I thinking when I wrote that?
Okay. Balance, secret sauce. Finding the balance is combining the science of desire with the wisdom of reality.
That's good.
Yeah.
I wrote that?
No. Doctor. Oh, am I supposed to pick one that you wrote?
No.
I think it's Dr. Anna. I cannot.
Perfect. No, I'm impressed that, first of all, you were able to read my writing. So I know you've been around a while.
Yes.
So I get it.
I followed you quite a bit.
I've seen you. I know you've, but it's not the first, right? But obviously that meant a lot to me for me to write that down. So
first thing that comes to mind is going gluten-free.
Yeah?
Yeah, from the realm of, we know there's science. Okay, so you have a patient, right, that's having dysbiosis, leaky gut. They know that gluten is a trigger. We know that gluten's a trigger, especially our gluten in the United States, right?
Oh, yeah.
And our genetically modified wheat, not the best thing for our gut microbiome. And so that's the science, right? We know this. And the science of desire, wanting to get better, but the wisdom of reality, will you actually make that change? Mm-hmm. I don't know why that came to mind. It's a big barrier. And I always talk to my patients about finding the balance of how good they want to feel and what they're willing to adjust to get there. Because, you know, we talk about it with gluten. I talk about it a lot with alcohol, right? Alcohol's a big one for people that they hold on to it for their quality of life. And it's something that is really neurotoxic. It doesn't make us feel well. But there is, you know, that GABA dump you get. There's that fun aspect of alcohol. So that's what it reminds me of. It's finding the balance of giving up what you know you enjoy, but things that aren't the best for your health, to the point where you still feel like you're living.
Yeah. And that's very tough. It's tough. Yeah. It's actually a process, a journey, I think, in of itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was, I loved your take on it. I think that was
probably because I'm Italian, so I thought about the gluten.
The gluten, you picked out that.
I just picked out the gluten.
But you know what? When I related to gluten, you know what I say to patients all the time is this: you do not have to change overnight.
Right.
We are not expecting you. When, of course, obviously, if you're that person, some people are on and off. You know what I mean? So you know, if you say, hey, you should really be gluten-free. You have autoimmune disease. You have leaky gut. Yeah. We're going to do this with your digestion, et cetera. And you need to be gluten-free. Some are just, boom. I mean, doc, you tell me, I'm doing it. I mean, it's just how they are.
Yeah.
They're how they're wired. About anything, by the way. When they start working out, they go crazy. They start working on tons, you know. Other people, though, need those baby steps. And I always tell them, look, if you can, you know, be 80% right now, be 70%.
Right.
In 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe 2 months, you'll be 90%.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you might look back, and I have many patients that look back a year later and go, I cannot believe that I am gluten-free. Yeah. I never thought I could do it.
Right.
I never thought I could do it.
It's not as hard as it sounds.
It's not as hard as it sounds. It's just shocking at first.
It's shocking at first, yeah.
You know, we don't want to give up some of our enjoyments.
Right.
No one does.
No one does.
Yeah. And then I always reward them with this. And the husbands and, well, the spouses, I should say, love this. I go, and you guys can go to Europe now. Go to Italy.
Yeah.
Because you can eat all the, whatever you want to eat there, because it's so good and so natural and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that to me too, which I love that quote, but reminds me of this saying is that, and I try to do this myself, is to be not married to my answers, be married to my questions. And the reason is it's very easy for doctors, providers, and I'll put myself in that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm not innocent of this, because of ego and having to be right. I see this sadly also in a lot of cancer patients with their oncologists or whoever's directing their care is, our egos get big, all this training and everything. And it's not just doctors. I think it's all practitioners they got to be careful with this.
Yeah.
And we don't know everything.
No.
Medicine is why is our office, what do people say when they say, hey doc, I'm going to come see you? What do they say? They say, where's your practice? Isn't that funny? Where's your practice?
Yeah.
Like, where do you practice?
Oh, okay.
It's ironic that they, now obviously we're not practicing, but medicine is not, think of how it's evolved in the last 2, 3, 4 decades.
Yeah.
Alone 2, 3, 4 decades.
Yeah.
Talk about hundreds of years. But I think we have to medically always go, there's a lot more out there. That's why I love what we do, because our toolbox keeps growing. The knowledge base, the science, we're open to this. That's what functional, kind of regenerative, integrative medicine is about.
Constantly learning and evolving.
Not just like, this is what we do, and this is what we're married to, this answer, and this is how we treat this, and that's all it is. Because you're left in the dust, actually, in evolution medically, if that's the way you think.
And your outcomes suffer.
For sure, absolutely. And what wins? Our ego. Who cares?
Yeah.
But I mean, I do think that there's a fight there in some doctors, it's like they got to be right,
Yeah.
So anyway, that was a good one. That was a deep one, by the way, you picked out of here. That was a deep one. I got some goofy ones in here, so that's why.
Pick a goofy one.
What's that?
I said pick a goofy one.
Look at this one right above it. Leonardo da Vinci. The noblest pleasure is the joy of understanding. It is, yeah. if you understand something, it does feel good.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
So listen, thank you so much, Alex. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having me.
So fun, so easy. You're so intelligent and so insightful into a lot of things.
Oh, thank you.
I can honestly say this, and I'm not stroking you. I'm not giving you just to pump you up on the air here. Your patients love you
Oh, thank you.
so much.
Well, I love my patients.
No, but they love you. I think your schedule says it. Okay.
Yes.
I need to give you more time off, probably because you well deserve it. No, but because you're always booked out. People love to see you. You do great care. I have not one ever, if I have you or I ask you, hey, what do you think about this or whatever? I know you're right on. So you've grown, with us so immensely, your knowledge base, you personally, I think even the stuff you bring to the visits are very, very, very powerful.
Oh,
and I want to say, because not every patient says this, I know some do, believe me, I do, but I'm thanking you for them because I do hear it. I hear it over and over and over and over. So thank you, and just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And just being you.
Well, thank you. And I'm grateful to work with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, and you put up with me. So thank you so much.
No, it's not putting up. No, not at all.
All my visionary, crazy, ideas, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, thank you so much. And thank you for joining us again at here, the Deep Six podcast, where we make a generational impact on you and yours. And the Deep Six model, the foundation here that we bring you from Longevity Health Institute. You be well, and we'll see you again.